Pledge of Allegiance.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Ridgefield Park Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Bergen Record, Municipal Building, Board of Education offices, and district website. Public participation will be conducted both in person and virtually through Zoom. All public will be muted throughout the meeting. Public participation comments are limited to 5 minutes. The public will be able to both speak and be seen by the board when participating virtually and telephonically via Zoom. Individuals participating virtually that wish to make comments during public participation will need to raise their hand by clicking the blue hand icon at the bottom of their Zoom window. Individuals participating by telephone that wish to make comments during public participation will need to hit *9 on their telephone to raise their hand. The Business Administrative Board Secretary will then unmute individuals one at a time to speak in the order that their hand was raised. We have a motion to open the meeting.
Make a motion, we open the meeting. Second.
Roll call, Mr. Phytros. Actually, Mr. Gibbons,
Here.
Mr. Gomes, Mrs. McNeil,
Here.
Dr. Martinez,
Here.
Mrs. Orth, Mrs. Rodriguez, Mr. Verselli, Mr.
Here.
Cathcart. Oh, yeah, thank you, Mr. Cathcart,
Here.
and President Fernandez.
Here.
Also present, Acting Superintendent Dr. Barry Haynes, Business Administrator Carrie Grabstein, and Judith Wilson, presenter.
Well, good morning, everyone. And for folks who are at home, this is the purpose of really thinking about the goals of the district and what that looks like when Ridgefield Park is amazingly successful in reaching those goals and working toward them in the next years. For board members working from home, we're going to, or from wherever you are, actually, we'll be sure to include you in discussions, and please just hit that microphone and chime in whenever you would like, in case my eyes aren't on that. For folks who are here, thank you. This is a very different feeling than we had on a very hot and humid night in July. And there's a clear sense of school bells ringing and buses moving. The Ridgefield Park buses and Little Ferry buses are lined up outside, and your athletic teams have been back. Your band has been, everyone's like back on track. And there's always that good sense of new beginnings, right? New beginnings. And we have to remember that, because as board members, you've been working very hard all summer. Sometimes it just feels like it's issue after issue after issue, and that's kind of the role you've taken on. But on the other hand, you've worked hard toward really meaningful pieces. And I just want to remind you, right, that as you toil and as you're here on Saturday morning and as you're thinking about these issues while you're also attending to many other facets in your life, how meaningful it is to those 2,200 children coming back to your 4 schools in just a few days. And just as important for your staff, right? We are very student-centered. Everything we do should remain student-centered, but we know that it's the faculty and the support staff that really work that magic and are thinking about how they're designing their year and their experiences for those 2,200 children. Also, just want to take a minute to say, I follow you a little bit, right? I follow your work. I'm not just here once in a while. As an observer, as an educator, as a parent, I just want to say that the gift that you have provided for your preschool children moving forward, after having made some really hard and important decisions, is a generational gift. It's a generational gift. High quality early childhood education will matter in the lives of not just their children, their children, their children moving forward. It is generational, and it was a move that will impact not just what happens for those children in kindergarten, first grade, eighth grade, but it will make a difference in their lives. So, after all of the hard work and debate and applications and technicalities, stop to say there's not just a vote, there's a meaning, a deep, deep meaning behind that step. So as a external person, I just want to say, like, woohoo, congratulations, because it really matters. And you need to do the meaningful work along with all of the background technical work. I also am going to just take a second to say that across the state and across New York and Pennsylvania and Connecticut, the places where I do most of my work, there is a great sense of recentering, right? That we hoped that last year would be a complete reset, like, oh, we're moving on. But we know what we faced in schools and families, staff last year was that we weren't stable yet, right? We were beyond some restrictions, but we came back with masks still. We came back with a lot of regulations still last year. But more than that, I think almost every adult engaged in public education thought, hoped that it would take about a month for our kids to settle in again. And when we realized that didn't happen in September or in November or in January, we came to terms with, maybe started to come to grips with the fact that our children, before the pandemic in 2019, our children were showing great signs of deep need, right? Every barometer we had showed us that our children were more anxious, more stressed, more suicidal, more fragile, less self-regulated than they had been in decades, if not ever. And so this isn't just a result of pandemic and learning from home and dealing with remote situations and dealing with family issues. This is long before that, and the pandemic has exacerbated that. And it exacerbated some stress for each of us as adults also in one way or another. So last year was, I'm going to say, a little more fragile in most places than we expected it to be, right? We weren't quite recentered yet, but here we are. We're opening the 22-23 school year across the Northeast with a better understanding of where our children and their families are. We're opening with a better understanding of adult thinking and what adults can do in our classrooms and in our schools to better support what our kids and families' needs are right now. And we're also opening with the solid understanding that this can be a year for recentering. And when I say recentering, I mean on academics, right? I mean on the SEL work, on the everyone's here together, right? We're back in the work full tilt is really what I mean. And that doesn't mean we didn't work very hard last year. It just meant that we still had a lot of loose ends to figure out. When you think about Ridgefield Park, again, welcoming 2,200 plus kids in a few days. to be able to do that with this understanding that you're on a little more solid ground than we have been for 3 years, right? And we need to capture that. We need to capture it, recenter, refocus, and be ready for understanding kids' needs and family needs, but knowing we can approach through our curriculum, our talents, the good people in the district, right? We're ready to be able to do this work. So recentering, we are about teaching and learning. That's our business. It's our mission. We have to keep reminding ourselves of that. So when I was with you on that very hot, humid July night, and you were sitting in children's seats attached to the cafeteria tables, sorry, we did start to think about government and governance mindsets. And so this morning, we're really going to get our, roll up our sleeves and think about your particular goals as a board and as a district, but a little bit of a review, right? We just want to think a little bit about what that good governance looks like. And so we used Michael Fullen's work, and I'm just going to remind you of these 4 mindsets. You have them, they're in your folders, but don't worry, we're just going to take a quick run through them right now. Then we're going to move on to a little bit of the research on trust and then dive into these goals. So as we think about the 4 mindsets that are required, absolutely required to be a high functioning team, we know that they are described by Fullen in this way. The first is that no board, no school district, no school faculty, but especially those of you who wear the mantle of governance and leadership, you cannot be a high functioning board if you're not thinking systemically, right? Systems thinking. That means that you're asking the question how pre-K will influence kindergarten. You're asking the question how your K-12 new health education curriculum will influence at every level, not just at one grade or one school. You're asking how, when we take this grant money and we apply it for one purpose, how that purpose is connected to everything else in the district. You are charged with the high level, the big picture, right? You've got lots and lots of staff who are going to take care of the management, the administration, the detail, the technical pieces, but you are the systems thinker. You're always asking, where does this take us? And how is it connected, right? You're responsible for advancing the goals. You're not responsible for administering them, but you're responsible for advancing the goals and the mission of the district. The second piece of great governance for each of the board members to have in the 4 of their work is, we're busy. We've got a lot on our agendas. How does the agenda fall together around our strategy, right? So you're very, very clear about your goals, right? And your goals are very clear and they're long-term. That doesn't mean you say, oh, it'll take forever to get there, but it means that you are saying they're multi-year goals because they demand a lot of work over time. We're going to work specifically with the Ridgefield Park goals this morning, but you're thinking strategy, right? At your level, your responsibility as a board member, you're thinking strategically. The third pillar beyond systems thinking and strategy is that you are a deep learner. You're the people who are asking the hard questions. And by deep learner, it doesn't mean like get in the weeds or, again, administer or manage. It means that you're asking the big hard questions, right? It means that you are asking what does this mean for us? Where will it take us? What does it look like when we're successful? They're the pieces of good governance, right? What does it look like when we're successful at this strategy? And what are the tough questions we need to ask to be deep learners? And the very, very last one, which I do think is actually challenging in all boards. Your work is public. It's not just public by document, right? Or by newsletter. It's public live. It's public in the moment when you are live streaming. You are the models of how we work together. You're the models for public manner, how we want to discuss things here, how we want to use processes to tackle tough issues, to bring in public input, to hear student voice, to communicate with all of our stakeholders. You are the ones who think about public discourse, problem solving, and while it's not always easy, it's process, right? It's always process. It's more than being polite. It's process, right? How do we tackle the hard issues and again, advance the goals? So the piece we're going to spend a little time on is what organizational trust looks like. And every school district is an organism. It's not just an organization, right? It's an organism of lots of individuals from age 3 to 80 working together to make good things happen. It is complex. In Ridgefield Park, you have a few more layers of complexity than some school districts do. And you know them, but you have to always work to remember them, right? You have a great relationship sending, receiving with Little Ferry. That's one little layer that's different than some school districts. You are working still with a state monitor. That's rare, right? And it is a heavy layer. It's a very heavy layer that most school districts do not have to consider. You're working still with an acting superintendent who's holding 2 roles. Got to recognize the complexity of that. The reason I'm saying these things and spelling them out is because A, they are not obstacles that can't be overcome, right? And they're not all obstacles, but they are realities of the complexity for you to govern, right? And some things can work in the moment, but you as board members are always thinking beyond the moment, right? For how long can we sustain? It's got to be a question always, right? It's just like when you need building repairs and you're working with the facilities and you're thinking about your future budgets. We've got that leaky roof. We know it's leaky. It might be getting a little worse this year. Where does it fit, right? We've got to attend to it. We can get by another year. All right. But not a year after that and a year after that, right? So your eyes are always on the longer term future and how long can you sustain? How long can you sustain? So you've been working to bring expertise to the district, to bring hands to the district's work. Your grant work has been beautiful. You'll have a grant assistant soon. All of these pieces really matter because you have to be able to sustain and move forward, right? With your eye beyond the moment. The moment is the joy of opening school. Beyond that moment, what will happen for the community, the families, and the kids? So we look at the piece of organizational trust. And this is, as you know, foundational to everything that happens in your life, right? Already today, you've been in conversations with people or interactions with people, and somewhere in the back of your mind, there is a level of trust. I trust the gas station I just went to this morning, right? I'm choosing that one over this one. I trust the communication I just had with my daughter on the way in. I trust that I'm walking into a public board meeting with people of very goodwill, right? Lots of intellect and expertise, not the same. not the same personalities, not the same styles. Maybe we don't even all want exactly the same thing. It's all okay if there's trust. Different is fine, but different is not fine without trust. And we know it's foundational to every organization. So as we think about that, we're just going to look at a few basics, because in a school district, just like in a family, in a community, doesn't matter, pick any organization, place of worship, insurance company, doesn't matter. There will be cracks. There will always be cracks. There'll be cracks in the trust in my family, right? There'll be cracks. The job here is to say, we notice a crack. Can we talk about that? Right? We need to talk about this. We notice, we need to find out why and where we can go from here. Because when that crack becomes a chasm, we're in trouble. Individually, collectively, and certainly as a board of governance. And so I do this work with school districts, helping them think about what trust looks like, whether that's with the union, whether that's across the board table, whether that's among faculty or with parents, all these dimensions that make a public school, right? And how every time we're in public, especially, but every time we're in conversation or email, we can sustain trust, build more trust, or break it down, right? Only one of three things is going to happen. It's going to remain status quo. We're going to build some trust, which is a process, or we're going to chip away and have some more cracks in it, right? So what does that really look like? The kind of guru for many decades now around organizational workplace trust is Feltman. And I've gifted you each with his book. It's a second edition, just out in the last year. And it's a really, it's called The Thin Book of Trust. It is thin. And it's built around a few very basic premises. And we're just going to take a look at those for a minute. And I'm going to use, myself as an example over a lot of years in schools. Sometimes the word trust is thrown around pretty easily, like too easily. Sometimes we really have to examine, what do you mean by that? I can't trust him. I can't trust her. I don't trust the whatever, board, association, parent group, whatever it is, right? That changes from time to time. If trust is foundational to doing good work, we want to know, how do we build it? And Feltman breaks this down to four very, very basic components. So I'm going to ask you just to look at that. And folks who are on Zoom, if you have your folders in front of you from our last discussion, you have this in your folder. But there's a little graphic, and I'm just going to steal this for a minute if you don't mind while I see it. There's a little graphic. It comes right from the very front page of the book. And it breaks down really what we mean by building trust. What does trust look like in any relationship? So the first element, the first pillar, if you will, is care. Do you individually, collectively, whatever the entity is, are you able to show we're in this together, we care? We care about the mission, we care about the schools. Well, let me tell you, I don't know a school board member who took the time and the effort to run for an election, win an election, take an oath, and show up on Saturday mornings to do this good work, who doesn't demonstrate lots of care about what happens. Care doesn't mean we all want the same thing, but it means we care deeply about what does happen, right? The second is, have we demonstrated reliability? So, we each know what we mean when we say, is that person reliable? Is that board reliable? Is the faculty reliable? My next door neighbor reliable, right? My 17-year-old son. Well, we're working on all that, right? So let's think about reliability means, you can count on me to deliver what I promise. If I'm going to be late, I'm going to tell you I'm late and why, meaning late I promised it for Friday, but I really need till Monday. And this is why. You're still reliable, right? You're going to pull through. You're going to communicate about it. But the big picture is in this phrase, you can count on me to deliver, meaning I serve on this board. And it's not just that I'm going to show up on Saturday morning. It means that over time, over my 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, it means that I will deliver on the advancement of the district goals. It doesn't mean I'll deliver on the 4th grade gifted program, right? Or what I think we should be doing with the green initiative. It means when we have collective goals, I'll work and be reliable to help deliver on those collective goals. The third piece is sincerity, right? We want sincerity in our lives. We need sincerity in our lives. And it really is, I mean what I say and I'll act accordingly, right? I am sincere. When I say I'm here for kids, I'm really here for kids and I'm going to act that way. When I say I care about how we do collectively and not just for myself, I'm going to act in a way that's for the collective good and not just for myself. Sincerity, not just lip service, not just words, but this is a mission-driven, purpose-driven role, right? It's about children. We're going to act the way we talk and mean what I say and show up for it. And the last piece is competence. Now, we all have different definitions of competence, right? And we all have wishes sometimes that maybe somebody else could be better at what she does or what he does or how things happen. But here's the thing about competence. It doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't always mean excellence. We want it to mean excellence as much as we can, but it doesn't always mean that. Competence means I know how to do my work and I'm willing to learn how to do it even better, right? Doesn't mean perfect. It means solid, right? Solid. It doesn't mean adequate. It means solid, like not perfect. It's not going to go 100% the way we would in a textbook classic formula all of the time, but competent teachers, competent custodians, right? Competent administrators, competent board members, right? Solid. Make mistakes, willing to think about it, talk about it, work it through again. Competent. Don't quite know the new curriculum or the new technology or the new state law yet. We're going to work it out. Competent. We're going to learn about it. Right? So when we understand that this trust is foundational to everything that happens for the good of our kids, we also need to not throw the word around ever, right? Because it's so critical. And we need to take the time to ask ourselves, you know what? Might not agree. That doesn't mean I don't trust. I might not like it at the moment. That doesn't mean I can't trust, right? Because we have to say to ourselves, wait a minute, is there care? Reliability? Big picture, right? Care, reliability, sincerity, and competence. Yes, 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 yes. Trust in place. Now let's work out why we're not on the same page or what we don't like or what could have gone better, right? They're processes. So I think that last time I was with you, I might have used these 2 words and said to you again and again, as board members, if you could be asking yourselves all of the time, we know our goals, we trust. Now here are the 2 questions. What's our approach and what's our process? What's our approach and what's our process? Forever and ever, ad nauseum, ask yourselves those 2 questions. Because when you do, you're not saying, how do I make that person happy? Or how do I make that person go away? Right? You're saying, We know where we are. We know where we want to get. And there isn't necessarily a quick fix. It isn't like, let's come up with an answer, right? But rather, we're asking ourselves, approach and process. Taking that upfront time to figure that out first and then do the work pays off multifold, right? Multifold. It's just like a great lesson design. You might have to tweak it, but the more you put into the design and the planning, the better it's going to go, right? The more you put into the planning of a construction project, the better it's going to go. Planning a dinner, doesn't matter what it is, approach and process, right? So you're in this big picture of long-term approach and process, how we lead, how we govern, and what happens on behalf of kids. So I'm going to ask you to take some time now to think about your organization, to think about where you are as a board, and do that understanding that this is what we're going to work on as a product this morning. We're going to talk about what goals the board itself might want to work on, and simultaneously, how does the board help advance the district goals? So the district goals are your 3 strategic goals. They involve everyone who signs on to work here, and they're multi-year. You're heading into a new year advancing that work. But first, let's think about board goals. Board goals fall under these categories. It's the work of the board itself. Only you can do it. You're not going to send it off to anybody else, right? Can't delegate it, can't distribute it to others. Your work is policy approval. Your work is strategic direction. Got your strategies in place. Your work is facilities. Nobody else can direct facilities except you saying, this is where the money's going to go. These are the projects. This is what our buildings and grounds look like. Budget. It's not anybody else's role with the BA and her office. How do we handle the fiscal responsibilities of the board? No teacher, right? No parent, no, that's your work. And the last is community support along with stewardship. You're responsible for good stewardship, for kids, for money, for goodwill. So you've got 6 areas. That's all the work of the board. All to be done with a governance mindset. Systems thinker, strategy, deep learner, and good public manner, right? And that's it. Now that's a lot, but that's it. That's how we frame it. So when you think about that, I'd like you to begin to think about both the trust piece and the how do we become a better board? Like literally, strong thinkers, great boards are always thinking about how do we become better at what we've been charged to do. Not to mention you're a team, right? And by law, you're a team with your superintendent, right? Superintendent doesn't vote, but he's on the team. And you have that team relationship. It is a joint, it is not the board versus, it is always the board with. Okay? So when you think about how you function now, how you might like to function moving forward, or is there an area that you believe we can get better at, right? Not 6 areas. What is it that you would like to see the board work at in the next year or two to become a even higher functioning board? Right? District can't function as a high functioning district unless there's a high functioning board. Right? So I'm going to be quiet for a little bit. And I think that we can get our 2 board members on Zoom into a Zoom room. Can we do that? 3 members, sorry. Yes, of course. Who are on Zoom.
Before we go, can
on
I
Zoom.
ask,
Yep. Diane,
before we
good
go
morning.
into the Zoom room, can I,
Yes,
good morning. I just want to ask a clarifying question.
sure.
You know, when you had said what the work of the board is,
Mhm.
last time we met, there was one other thing you said, which was superintendent evaluation, which you didn't
Yes.
raise. I assume that's, you know, that's
That's-
part of our job, right? That's the
It
only
is.
person we
And
employ
it's only your job. Yes,
directly.
absolutely. Yes,
Right.
thank you. It is only your
The
job.
second
Nobody else
thing
can
that,
do that.
great. The second thing that I just wanted to clarify in terms of the achievement of the district strategies, the way that I understood it from watching last year's recording was the district comes up with the strategies. We've got our strategies. The superintendent should lay out the time and action planning, and the board should be ensuring that they're comfortable with, understand, asking the challenging questions about that plan and will it suffice. And I just want to make sure that the
Yes,
district strategy role of the superintendent versus the board is clear for us.
yes, thank you for that. So let's take one more round at that. So board goals aside, board meaning the work of the board itself aside, we're going to put that aside for a minute. The district goals are your strategic goals, right? And they do impact every person who comes to work on behalf of your 2,200 children. The board did endorse and continues to endorse those district goals. We're in the middle of this river, right? The river is flowing. We're in the middle of it. We know what we're working on. It is very much the work of the whole administration to say, these are the action steps. And this is what it looks like from school to school, grade to grade, class to class, field to field, right? This is what this looks like in order to support moving forward with these strategies. In the end, absolutely, the board is always looking at accountability. Remember, you're in charge of quality control and building capacity. So in that quality control, you're looking not day to day, not even week to week, but you're certainly looking year to year at how do we know? And when you ask the question, how do you know? You're looking at 2 bodies of work. And this is very important. You are looking at data that's quantifiable, meaning attendance rates, test scores, college acceptances, those things that you can put numbers on, discipline records, right? That you can say, X this year, this many this year, this score last year, this score next year. However, that's only a piece, a slice of what you're going to look for progress. Because high performing districts also need to look at evidence. So I'm going to use data as that quantifiable, like on a chart, with here to here. Evidence, you're an organism, right? An organization. We're dealing with human beings. Evidence is what else are our children engaged in? Student projects, clubs, leadership, awards. What else does it look like in our classrooms? What have we learned from climate and culture surveys, right? That's not a number, that's a trend, right? That's input. What do we hear from focus groups of faculty? Evidence, input. So your superintendent and administration are always looking at both data and evidence, what really is happening across the schools. You never want to get locked into just scores. You'll never be a high performing district, sustainable, right? Because it's a lot more than that. When we're too focused on scores, we are doing worksheets and test prep instead of great instruction design. right? Scores come as a byproduct of great instruction. Scores come as a byproduct of great learning, right? So I hope that addresses your question. It does go back then to how are we doing? Did we have an organized approach to this? What were our processes and what did they yield? And then I think to tie that back, everything, every aspect of the tool that you use for your superintendent evaluation is tied into this, right? Your whatever tool you use to evaluate your superintendent on an annual basis is tied into this. And it is a cycle. It's very much a cycle. Other input, questions, comments from board members? It's not easy work. We don't nail it every time, right? We just want to know what we're aiming for. Okay, so I would like you we'll just do by table first of all, and then by Zoom room. I would like you to just spend the next 10 minutes thinking about what as a board is it worth us moving to the top priority and thinking about? Is it our public manner? Is it our ability to set process? Is it our accountability to one another, right? What is it? Is it our internal communication? What is it that would really strengthen the collective work of the board? Right? So I'm going to turn my microphone off. We're going to make sure, can we get them into a Zoom room? And okay. Can't, I'm sorry, we can't. All right, so we're going to ask folks on remote, we're going to ask you to think about this question on your own for 10 minutes and then be able to share your individual thoughts when we come back together. And folks here at the table, I'm going to turn my microphone off and ask you to just chat without your microphones, just chat at the table in discussion. Then we'll be back with microphones on to share our thoughts. Good. Okay, so you just need to stretch for a few minutes. So we're going to dive into the discussion, but I'm going to give you 4 or 5 minutes. Just get a little snack, have a stretch, and 4 or 5 minutes, I'll call everyone back together. Okay, we're ready to share some thoughts. And I'm just going to say a word about language. No matter how passionate we are, or even critical or concerned, we want to be able to use the language of possibility, right? Always the language of possibility. We try hard to do that with our kids, with our colleagues, but especially in governance at the board table, we really want to use the language of possibility. And that means thinking about comments that might start with, thank you, that might start with like, what if we, right? Instead of like, we should, or I want to, right? Like, what if we, might it be possible? Yes, and, right? Could we think of it in a different way? When you're the board member who can bring that to the table, that sense of invitational conversation as opposed to shut down and conflict, when you're the board member who can think bigger than the moment of emotion or disagreement, all that's fine, but try to think about your language of possibility, like saying to each other professionally, you know, tightly, firmly, but saying to each other, what if we, might it be possible? Yes, and could we think of it in a different way? Is there another approach, right? Is there a process that'll yield a better result? Like, these are the questions of really great leaders and great boardsmanship. So where you are today, and I just want to say to folks, and if there are people watching or watching this later, you know, this is a really healthy, this is not a critical, take stock, give us a grade, where are we, how do we function? This is a healthy exercise for any board to engage in, to be able to have a little few minutes of self-reflection before they pound right into the next agenda and the next board meeting. So let's just hear from folks who are remote, give you an opportunity first. If you would like to open up your mic, if there's anything that you would like to share about, if you would like to put on the table, I think we as a board might pay more attention to, might work on. Anything from folks who are remote?
Hello. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Hello. Hi. Do you hear me?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
So this is trustee Belinda Rodriguez. So I was thinking about, I zoomed in a little bit late, probably 10 minutes in. I had issues connecting, but I was listening about what you were saying, and I was just wondering, could it be possible to focus on communication, specifically internal communication, and understand that, we are all, different, but we're there for the children. We might not be, we may not be in agreement, and it's okay. However, we need to be somewhat responsible and just like remind ourselves that everyone on the board is equal. Sometimes I wonder if, in fact, some are, privy to information, and that prevents us for true transparency among ourselves and with the public. And, we each have one vote. And when we vote, we must also remind ourselves that our duty as elected official, and I dislike politics, but we are elected officials. We are there, and we chose after we won the election. We could have said no, but we chose to take on the responsibility that comes along sitting in that seat, whether it's that physical seat or that seat, via Zoom, that chair. And equity, I've only been in the district for 20 years, and I say only because sometimes, I'm looked at as an outsider for many reasons. And equity in our district is a concern for me and for many, many people, many parents and many community members. And I do want to be positive. We do have the resolution, the social justice resolution, and and Dr. Haynes, I do have to say, with the current plan he has in place regarding the two subcommittees, I personally think that we are moving in the right direction. But I was just wondering if we can focus more on communication.
Thanks so much for starting us off. Communication, we always say it's the WD-40, right? What makes things work or not work. And internal communication and external communication are both the responsibility of this joint team, the team of superintendent and board together. And they are often what trips us up. Like even the best plan or the best design can get tripped up by internal communication or external to our stakeholders and constituents. So I would love to follow up on a couple of points that you made. One is about equity. And I'm just going to say that equity is the bedrock, right? Equity is not an event. Equity is not one action plan. Equity is not 1 year. Equity has to be embedded in your DNA, and it has to be the bedrock of what we do for all. So it's that lens, like, do you have an equity lens through which you're seeing almost all of your work, if not all? You also use the word transparency. So thank you, because I'm going to put my public hat on for a moment and say that I think the word transparency is used, I think it's overused, first of all, my own opinion, but I also think that as a board member, we want to understand it's our responsibility, and we work hard to be transparent about what we're doing and why, right? Especially the why. Sometimes we get to the what and we don't explain to people, like, we're doing this because, right? There's a sound rationale. We thought about it, and these are the reasons. But transparency does not mean everything gets disclosed. And I say that more for the public. It cannot, right? There is an awful lot, that is legal, that is personnel, that is not to be disclosed publicly. And so you need the arc of the story, but often you must understand that there are, not you board members, public, that there are details that aren't to be shared, that you, because of your role, are privileged to know, or have to have the trust in your BA, your attorney, your leaders. You must understand that there are some things that you just cannot disclose, no matter what, right? And so transparency means we're explicit about what we're doing and why we're doing it when we come to public votes and public meetings. And we're able to tell the arc of the story. This is a piece that's going to lead us to another piece. It's going to lead us to a bigger piece, right? We're building. So there were a lot of points embedded in your comment.
So,
And
excuse
thank
me,
you
if I
for
can
starting us
follow up
off.
to
Yes.
okay, I've got a little bit of a delay. I don't know if I stepped on someone. I apologize if I did.
You did not. Go right
I would
ahead.
Okay, great. I would like to just follow up on what Trustee Rodriguez said. And I think the transparency that she may be referencing is among the board. So we are divided into committees to deal with different things. And the level of information and discussion at those committee meetings or in sidebar conversations or sidebar emails, because we can't include everyone on emails because then we've got a quorum and we're breaking
Right.
sunshine. But those conversations, I think, I know for myself personally, I feel at meetings that I may not necessarily understand the why. So that arc of the story and being able to vote on the arc of the story is problematic. And, what if we did something like we're more rigorous with the minutes from those subcommittee or those committee meetings where the chair was responsible to send out detailed information, or where the superintendent, laying out the plans could give us the plan that gives the arc more than the decision we're making today.
Yeah.
Or is there any benefit of having a caucus meeting once a month that we actively discuss things without voting on anything? So we have the 2 weeks between the caucus meeting and the regular
Action,
meeting,
right.
to vote on things.
Yeah.
Right. So I think, from a communication standpoint, I'm right there with her. And I think it's the internal communication and the internal transparency that we're trying to understand, because I think you said it earlier,
is
some people come
exactly
in, it's like, well, I know how I'm voting.
I should have been a little bit more clear. Yes, is the internal communication. That is my concern. We need to, could it be possible to focus on the internal communication? And I think that if we focus and work on the internal communication, maybe that can, that will help us as a board be more transparent with the public, because optics and when we have our meetings, it is clearly visible that we are not divided. I'm sorry, that we are divided. Sorry, it is clearly visible to the public that we are not united and we are divided.
So I think that that's a great focus point to have on the table as we go through and hear comments. Internal communication is complex. It's not an easy thing, but you've already outlined a couple of possibilities. So, nothing better than someone saying, could we work on, and here are some possibilities, right? So possibilities, there are boards that use a shared Google Drive in a different way for committee reports. So everybody sees it, right, at the same time. And it's legal.
Well, that was the plan in place. I'm sorry to interrupt you. When I first got on the board 2 years ago, we did receive reports from the financial Tevis, the former VA. He sent out the financial report, and I also sent out reports, the minutes from the faculties of program.
And from committees, right?
And yeah, just those two.
So-
Correct me if I'm wrong, we only received those two committee reports, the F&P and the Finance Committee. But for some reason, I'm not sure if, I don't know what exactly happened, but is that something that we can go back to? Because I think we discussed that we will just give the report the day of the board meeting. So could it be a
Okay.
possibility for us to share, like you said, create a Google Doc and share those reports?
Right. And so I think that you've just adopted board docs, right? So board docs will probably help a lot with this. It's a great tool and many boards in the state use it. I also want to say that you don't have to worry about like a detailed minutes as much on a committee as much as the highlights. Like we're working on, we're ready for, we're going to continue to work on, right? We're ready for means it's headed toward a board agenda, right? We're going to continue to work on is like, this is the story of our work continuing next month. So Dr. Haynes, you want to talk about board docs?
I
or
just wanted
BA?
to add one thing with Wilson. I'm sorry, I'm right
Please,
here.
no, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing we should get the facts more out, of our committee meetings. I know at the same time, when I came on the board, we don't want like who said what, he said
No,
this,
no,
because
no.
it is a candid conversation, our committee
needs to
meetings,
be.
so I
And it's
think if the
not- and that
facts
wouldn't
get
be
out,
helpful.
maybe.
Right?
know.
That would not be helpful because that kind of tries to solidify someone else's thinking in your own words. So you really just want this is what we're working on. This is why we're working on. We're ready for prime time at a board meeting, or we're not ready for prime time yet. We're going to continue this discussion next month, right? Very bulleted, but tells the story.
If I might, Jim Themis used to do that. He had a standard form and it was just bullet points.
Resurrect that one, right?
Yes, he did.
It's a
No, he
great
did.
tool.
Actually, he actually sent it to me when I got on the board, and that's the same form that I was using. So I'm
Okay,
able to
so
share that with.
Let's
with you.
revert back to that and see if it needs to be revised or it's ready to go again. But we want the content, not the who said or why, or right? And it really is three pieces. It's like, why are we even addressing this? Here's the topic. Why are we addressing it? Have we made decisions or are there ongoing pieces of work to be done? Period. Like works for every committee.
Well, if we go to board docs, we'll be able to do that, correct, Barron?
So I'm not sure. I think so. Let me give an example that's frustrating to me, though, along with hopefully the solution. So we have a personnel committee meeting. And in those personnel committee meetings, I go through all the resumes, talk about the people who were hired, and I do talk about, in context of the social justice resolution, some of our new faculty being good for our kids, for bringing a diversity. And that's all covered in personnel. And then there are other people I know who deserve that information, and it feels like it got locked up into the personnel committee meeting. And I'm hoping through a board docs or through a memo, then I can say to the entire board, just briefly, here's what we discussed. Here are the resumes. Here are the people. I don't want to say who we talked about, but I'd feel so much better that that information got shared with the whole board than locked into a committee.
So I would think maybe resumes aren't necessary, but the story is necessary, right? Because you don't, I apply to a
I would
district,
agree with
I
you
apply to
because
the district, but yeah, go right ahead.
I agree with you because there's something like there's difference between data and information, right? Out of the
Yes.
subcommittee meetings, I don't need to see every single thing that you looked at and talked about. But in the subcommittee meeting, if they're, for instance, personnel, and I was one of the people that asked at last board meeting, where do we stand at a global level with open jobs? Do we have a concern that we don't have enough teachers to open with?
Great
How
question.
many, like what percentage of the new hires are diverse or not diverse? And we confirm that all of the applicants, that none of them are related to people in district, which historically has been a problem. And like just those kind of highlights are what I'm looking for. And like
Yes.
from buildings and grounds, the big projects that we're doing, we keep talking about for instance, the bus loop, right? And there are problems and we're not ready. Well, I don't want to get to the day that I have to vote on something on the bus loop and I have no information of what were the issues,
Right.
what were the big questions that buildings and grounds was grappling with. I don't
Yeah.
need to know the detail of what the soil,
No.
test was,
No,
because
right.
I don't have time for that.
No, nor should it be your role, right? But you want to know the overarching question. What's our goal here? Why are we working on the bus loop? What do we need to do? What needs to be changed? How are we going to change it? Yeah. Okay. Other,
No, I agree. Just having not like a detail or a script, a detailed report or script, but just like where, to me personally, like I want to know where we are in terms of like finances and what the finance committee discussed. Not so he said, she said, but when
No.
Davis was on, like he gave us a detailed report, but not conversations between, he did not include any conversations, if any,
No.
in his report. So, and I'm on the faculties and programs, personnel and policy committee. So in terms of the need of the district, in terms of personnel, like we did discuss the current hires, but not, and Dr. Haynes we knew before the board meeting that he did everything possible to
Recruit.
fill every single position and recruit qualified the best qualified individuals, and with diversity in mind. But like when I make decisions, I want to know what the finance committee discussed.
Right. So remember that the reason you're saying this is because you're systems thinkers, and what happens in policy and what happens in finance and what happens in facilities all has to support one another, right? You're not individual isolated pockets here. You all feed in to one big picture organization, right? So there does need to be that understanding.
Can I build on something Mrs. Rodriguez said about communications? And we had the discussion. We are blessed in this, that we have young dynamic leaderships in our building and they have great ideas. I think what we need to do is go to the stakeholders and say to the stakeholders, this is what we're doing. And that should be done quarterly so they can see the progress and not hear all the negative, but see the positive that the board is working. And that's part of the communications, not only the internal, but the external.
Very much so. So, just as much as we want our public taxpayers and parents who are taxpayers, right, both, to know what's going on in our schools so that they have a sense of, I'm proud of it. Like, this is a great place. I want my kids to be a part of it. I'm glad I'm in this neighborhood. I'm glad to pay taxes toward it. Nobody says they're glad to pay taxes, but they're glad if they're going to pay taxes, they're glad it's going to the right, good work. We need, if I come here to teach, if I come here to be an administrator, if I come here to be on your support staff, I'm part of something bigger. And I need to know what that bigger looks like. And in the best of all worlds, have a voice in it. Not a vote, right? Board votes, but have a voice, a place to put my ideas out, right? So internal and external. Other topics that came up as you were thinking about the work of the board, how to be a stronger, better, more effective board.
As Dave said, we talked a lot about communication inside the board and with superintendent, but also, between the superintendent, the board, and between board members, but also with the public, as Dave said. And I just want to go back to the word transparency, because it does get tossed around a lot in this district, in part because the public doesn't trust us. Not us individually, but the board. We've had some issues in the past. And so, but I think that transparency, the word means you can't see it. And so I'm a little triggered when somebody tells me there's none to see here. I prefer when I can see the rationale. So I wrote down the way you explained transparency as being explicit about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Clarity.
And
right?
I think even in I'm not looking to make the board packet any more pages, but sometimes there are some items that are written, we need to order these because the old ones are 100 years old. Or we hired this teacher who's, you know, an entry level teacher with very little experience, either because we didn't have that many applicants or because this person has this skill, like, you know, some more information that allows us to see like, all right, this is why I find myself reading board packets and also the amount of emails. We do have a lot of communication in this board. I don't know that it's always effective, but there's a million emails that go around the entire weekend,
Yeah,
bouncing
and
around.
sometimes too many, I'm sure.
It's just a thirst for us to catch
Right.
each of us to
Right.
catch up. I don't know how George and Dr. Haynes do it because they're busy cutting and pasting and hoping to answer 3 questions poorly
Well, so,
because there's so many diverse questions.
thank you, because yeah, transparency is clarity, right? Transparency isn't revealing every detail. Transparency is clarity of the why and the where, you know, what we're working on, where we're going. You mentioned something that I believe trustee Fernandez mentioned earlier, and that is information is power, right? As a board member, the information you need is not we had to order 1,000 units of this at this cost, right? It's not this classroom had a leak and we did this about it, right? I must be leak minded today. That's the second time I've mentioned that example. Anyway, maybe it's because as a superintendent, I still have those scars of Labor Day weekend thinking like, are all the facilities really ready for Tuesday? But information is power. So the information that you want to share is not only here are the highlights of committee work, highlights, like keep that in mind, right? The arc of the story, the highlights. But nobody except a board president in times when it is such a high level, you know, I can probably count on one hand in 19 years as a superintendent that my board president and I had knowledge that no one else had. And sadly, it always involved a prosecutor, right? So like there are things that like, got to share it with the board president, but this isn't going anywhere yet. Back up to say, when you use either your new board docs or these forms, like everyone gets it, not 4 people, not just one committee, not right. If you as a board member say, I'm not interested in that, don't need it right now, fine, but it's there for you, right? But not the nuts and bolts, folks, like it's not your job. It's just right, it's not your job. You can't do it. You have other professional responsibilities and lives, and it's not your role, right? Clearly not your role. If you're worried about something at a detail level and you say, I don't think this is right up to par, whatever, you share it with the superintendent delegates, or the superintendent puts a plan in place, right? Or meaning like facilities or operations or technology, or right. Or says not now. I also really want to encourage you to not be afraid to say that. Like, I don't know, Judy Wilson stands up at your public forum as a parent and says, I want this done. I don't know. I want to change the grading system. I want to change the dress code, right? I want to, whatever it is. Interesting, might be of merit, but we can't take everything on at the same time. We don't have capacity. We have to focus. So that idea might have to wait, or please remember that Judy Wilson might not know anything she's talking about, just has one little personal experience, right? So because my child had a bad lunch today doesn't mean that the entire lunch program is bad and has to be revamped, right? We've got to have the 360-degree view, right? We need to know child had a bad experience at lunch, but that's not for us to like suddenly say, oh, the sky is falling. What do we need to do about that? We have to go into action. It's like, what do we know? What do we need to know? Is that something has to go on our plates now? Or is that something that is not rising to the level of our focus, right? There are times where we have to say, great idea, has to wait. Might not be the best idea for us. Not going to act on it. What else did you discuss?
I want to go back to something Dr. Martinez said a second ago, because I always find it, Ms. Wilson, difficult to remind people and to communicate people that we have a state monitor. So Dr. Martinez said something about hiring a personnel at step level 1 who may not have had experience. And I find it, I do need to remind people more than not.
Yeah.
The state monitor reminded me a few months ago, as we were going into a heavy hiring season, that when he first came on into the district, 2016, that there was a pact made between the superintendent and the administrators at the time, because we were in financial arrears. Nobody would be hired beyond step 1 or step 2. And so I've tried to.
Big restriction.
It's a
right?
huge restriction. And I've tried to adhere to that as best as I could. Now, you'll see by the last hiring we did that he and I certainly negotiated many of those. And I use that term very purposefully. It's never, I pick up the phone, I talk to him, we go through things and it's okay. It is a negotiation about why this person is good for this district at this time and deserves more than a level 1, for example. So you'll see we did hire multiple levels, but for me to communicate, it takes an inordinate amount of time to go through the process. It's not a typical superintendent job where I go, that's an awesome candidate for our district, let's hire them. It's always, thank you, principal, for your information. I have it all. I'll be calling up the monitor and we will discuss it and I'll try to get back to you in a day or so. It's
Yeah.
always a lengthy process.
And I'll go back to saying that it is rare that a district has to operate under that kind of construct, right? It is a negotiation always with the power of the board, the power of a superintendent, and the power of a monitor, right? So you're dealing with 3 strong entities, not 2. And it adds a deep layer. It doesn't add a trivial layer to the work that needs to be done in Ridgefield Park. Just factually, I'm saying that, right? So it's always there.
And I'd be remiss in saying, recently in the whole hiring process and over the last few months, we have worked very well together and had good negotiations. I want that to be very clear to the
Mhm.
public, that relationship is working really well to support the needs of the district at this time.
And that's great. But it is a process. And that's my point, right? It's a process that's a
Right, and
process most don't have to engage in.
And I would just like to make a comment about the monitor as a reminder to the board. We have a monitor because the board in 2016 blindly followed resolutions without asking challenging questions. And that's one of the things that I find, our
Yeah.
charge. And no disrespect to you, Dr. Haynes, but we need to know why, because we
There's
need to be
history.
in charge of the district, not a monitor.
Absolutely.
And Ms. McNeil, thank you for that opportunity too. In our last board meeting, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the executive session, but for example, I thought that was constructed in such a way that the board had a very meaningful discussion on the things that were presented. And I'd love to see that as a model going forward. The issue for me and Ms. Wilson, I'm looking for solutions here. I want more time to discuss with either the whole board, not just committees, but the whole board, some of those issues like the early childhood. And I couldn't find a vehicle. You can't do that in executive session, right? That's limited to legal and personnel. So I couldn't use an executive session.
That's right.
I found that I had to do it in an open public meeting, which was okay, but I also felt like that was that time could have been better spent. And I think some of the people here today have been talking about, is there an opportunity for a town hall where I'm looking for, because
So-
I'm all about those kind of discussions.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where's the place for those meaningful discussions. So Mrs. McNeil can continue asking good questions so we can all be on the same page.
So there are only 3 or 4 vehicles that a New Jersey school board has to have those discussions. And I'll be the first to say, sometimes we don't use all of them enough, right? When we say town hall, in my understanding and my experience, when we say town hall, that typically is open, right? We're going to have a town hall meeting on early childhood. That means we're inviting in anyone who would like to attend. We have a construct on how to go about that meeting, and we know what we want. It's not a free for all, right? We know that there's a structure, and we would like to get these opinions, or we would like people to have this information, whatever it might be. Board attends those, but that's not a board discussion, right? It's board hearing from other people and sharing its own work. The other is to run focus groups, and that is time consuming, but it is an effective structure. Not focus groups ad nauseum, but focus groups on, that this is a chance for a superintendent or a superintendent and principals to say, we're going to be in each school in the course of November. And at this time, it'll be an open hour for us to hear from people and to talk about this topic, right? Social and emotional wellness, early childhood, whatever it might be. But for the board to have discussions, it really is this forum without me, right? It is a workshop, a public workshop, but a workshop. And in a public workshop, you can dive into a topic for 90 minutes, not a day, like 90 minutes. Hold yourself to it, right? Not 4 hours, not 90 minutes. We need to talk about proposals on the future of our long-range facilities plan, because they were not going to do it in a public meeting. And the facilities committee is saying they're ready for that. They need us to put our heads together to realize that we've got these challenges in the next years, and we have to be aware of the challenges and begin to figure out approach and process, right? So those workshops, they're not executive sessions, so they're live stream, or they're simply just announced and people can come without a live stream. That's a decision you need to make. I have to say, I think you need time to be able to discuss things, welcome the public in to watch. You'll have to decide whether you think everything will always be live streamed, right? Public comment before and after, not during, no engagement. Right,
Judy,
right.
Judy, I think, just reflecting on the past year, we could probably get that done by having a meeting like this 3 times a year. If we think about the major things that have caused us to do this meeting in public, under the gun, we could probably get that done in 3 meetings a year. The other thought I had is, I wonder if it's possible to get the part of the board packet that's kind of boilerplate, non-controversial. If we could get that like on a Wednesday before a meeting, even if it's a draft that has a big draft across it, only because, on Fridays, in terms of communication, it's just really heavy to
What day
get
of the week do you meet? Monday?
Wednesdays. So we get the board packet on Friday night.
And there it goes back to, I'd asked Ms. Grabstein, because I like the suggestion, but even trying to get it out on Friday, it's again, Ms. Grabstein, the president, and the monitor, we all agree and thoroughly review the agenda. And it takes a long time, and we're looking for revisions and corrections also. I start with my secretary doing the personnel and the other parts of the agenda that you see, not the financial part, on Wednesday. We started. She gives me a draft on Wednesday that we revise constantly before the Friday meeting with the monitor. That's where, and even that's
Hard.
right. You saw the new business that we walked in. That was right. It's challenging.
I just wanted to say that board docs is going to be a live working document, and we'll be able to exclude the public from certain things, but you'll be able to see more of the work in progress once we go to
And
board
earlier.
docs.
So maybe an example might be, so I hear you. Maybe an example would be that, the early childhood grant that we got in our packets that was due on the 1st. And we first put eyes on it on the 19th in the evening. Like if there's a big initiative like that or a big idea like that, like that's something that we could have marinated on that for almost a month, asked all our questions and been.
Yeah, big
Just-
ideas absolutely need more time, right? Big ideas, we know they're coming. right? That can't be last minute for anybody to try to digest, right? So maybe the agendas don't get out till Friday or maybe Thursday night, but big ideas, it's that continuum, right? It's that continuum. Okay.
So, and taking that point, I think arranging even now for 3 workshop meetings throughout the years, this year, knowing already what those big ideas are, might be a good way to handle it.
Right. A good way for you to keep your focus also, and not just think about this in August, but if there were, we look at your 3 strategic goals, and if you're thinking that we're going to have a workshop, and that workshop might involve, your directors or your principals or your coordinators, whatever, with you for that workshop, because they're the folks who have the closest knowledge to it. And if you were to say, we're going to have an early childhood, an all students known, and a college and career readiness workshop this year to keep us focused, right? To keep us together, to keep us in the know, and to bring our best thinking to the table with no other topics, right? And then if you're, I'll go back to the easy, not the easy work, but the easy topic of like facilities. That's the kind of thing where once a year, you need to be with your director of operations, your chair of facilities board committee. They need to be saying, because that's where, that's where all of a sudden, that's a 3-year on-ramp to get anything done with facilities, right? So that's not like a hire person. That's a 3-year on-ramp to say, we made it, we made that turf field happen, or whatever you need to do. We made that addition happen. So at least once a year, there has to be some focus on that facility piece. Budget time. We know there's, you always have your budget workshop, but that is built into us. We know that's going to happen, and Carrie's going to make sure that it does for everybody.
I think even just coming full circle, communicating with the public about our facilities, like, we spent, as long as I've been on the board, we spent millions and millions on upgrades to these buildings. And I think there should be a place online where the public can see what the old boiler looked like and what the new one looks like, and what the steps look like and what the old.
So
Even with some academic achievements, I sometimes lean over
Yeah.
to Dr. Haynes and I'm like, is that new or is that always here? Because
So-
the public needs to know what we're
Yes.
adding to the district.
So to your point, we need to be explicit about what we're celebrating and what our successes were. And if that's a boiler, or if that's an opening a new program, or if that's awards that kids got, like a lot of times there is a section, you certainly have it on your website, like what we're celebrating. But I know boards that literally publish a list every so often for the public of this is what this board has accomplished, not to pat yourselves on the back, but to say, we're working hard for you, like we're volunteers, but we're stewards of your money and your children, right? And so here are things that we really point to as accomplishments, right? And that academics, social and emotional, programmatic, facilities, saving money, right? Moving to a new energy source, or buying electric buses, or whatever you've done, right? If we're not explicit, no one will be for us, right? No one will be for us. We cannot assume that a lot of people are like watching every move, right? And reading every word that we put out. And nobody's going to a website unless they have a reason to be driven there. Like, I need this piece of information. People aren't Thursday night just in their busy lives saying, let me tool around the Ridgefield Park website and see what they're doing. It's just like,
Just a point of clarity then. So at the last board meeting on Wednesday, we had 2 amazing presentations, one from the high school principal on addressing social emotional needs mostly, and one because the board requested rightfully, hey, tell us the status of the summer programs. How did we do, right? A summary. And I
yeah,
thought they
huge
were
summer programs.
great. They took up 45 minutes of, I felt guilty because they took up 45 minutes of the program. And so it's I wonder, should that have gone into a workshop so that we can all celebrate the good work that's going on in the district? Like, where's the best place for that?
So I don't know that that should have gone into a workshop, because I have to say you've got to celebrate and in public forum. But I do think that I'm thinking about format here, but in either in the superintendent newsletter or the board newsletter or whatever goes out with highlights afterward, 2 sentences about, we had this amazing presentation on our summer programs. 300 kids were engaged. They did incredible things. And here, if you want to learn more and see more about it, is the link to that presentation, right? So we want everybody to get the 3-sentence version, because that's what I have time for in my life, right? And that's what we want them to know. But if I'm really more curious about the summer programs, just like, here's the live link, it'll take you right to that clip. That's what I see most in districts, right? Does that make sense? Like, that's good.
Totally makes sense, but things like, I don't know, the summer program presentation, it may have been, a little lengthy, but I don't know. Do people always click on the links, and go on?
They don't.
You know?
They don't. Only a few, but there's full transparency there. And if I'm really interested, I'll click on the link. But from a board perspective, I really only want them to read those 3 sentences. Like, we had a very successful summer set of workshops. 300 kids were engaged, and we did everything from gardening to boat building, right? That piques my interest. And I say, like, good for them. And kids showed up.
And with the facilities improvements, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you say
Absolutely.
maybe there's 10 plumbers in town and they're going to click on the link to see the new boiler, but everybody sees it. And when because when something goes wrong, the first thing people say, including myself, is, what are these people doing with my money?
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
And so,
Right.
there have been a lot of improvements to the facilities and to our curriculum and equipment board and academic equipment, but you don't see it anywhere. It's not
Yeah.
really visible.
One list, one story. Like, here's our facility journey in the last 5 years, right? 1 page. Yep. Here's our facility journey. Just for those of you who are wondering what we're doing with your, how many millions of dollars, Carrie, in the budget? 50. Thanks. With your $50 million. Like, this is one facet of our responsibility, right? 1 page though. 1 page. Yeah, just got to tell you, nobody turns the page. 1 page, there it is. Short attention spans, but get the meaningful work out there. Right, any other topics? So communication is typically the biggest hurdle for all of us, right? One-to-one, but certainly within an organization and a board. Internal communication, external. Other topics, I know that some of you built upon the earlier description of trust, and communication helps build trust, right? Telling the story helps build that multi-dimensional trust. Trust is just never one way or between 2 people. In an organization, like, those arrows are going every which way to build trust. Any other topics beside the communication one? So it seems, and this is for you to think about in the next weeks, it seems pretty clear that that's where the work is. Don't add 2 and 3 and 4 goals. Don't. You won't be successful at any of them, right? Just think about what that communication work looks like. Mr. Cathcart, were you going to mention something else?
I was just going to say that part of what we need to be doing is future planning also, considering the building that's going on in the community and the effects on the school.
Yeah.
We need to plan for, do we need to build, what do we need to do to correct the overcrowding problems?
Yeah. So that's a huge bucket of work. It can be very consuming, but just putting it out there saying your board recognizes that you're driving around town seeing construction, right? And some portion of that construction is going to have kids in it that are going to come to the public schools. So this is what we know we need to do in the next years. Know our enrollment, know our demographic study, have a good assessment of how our buildings are used now, right? And generate possibilities, right? Generate possibilities. But that work is 3 to 4 years in the making. But it's not 3 to 4 years to start. It's start because it's a 3-year journey, right? Can't ignore it. One time someone said to me, I said like, oh my gosh, there's all these new permits have been issued, and they're going to build. People are like, then they're building and people are like, they won't bring kids. Like they're only 2-bedroom apartments. I'm like, they're going to bring kids, right? They're going to bring kids. Like don't put your head in the sand. They're going to bring kids. And we're responsible for monitoring that, right? And for preparing for it.
That being said, with the guidance of Mrs. Grabstein, we've initiated a study for future needs.
Great. So you're already on the path, and it's just reassuring to people to know, okay, so my brother raised his 3 kids in a really fine, very large school district of 12,000 kids. And I don't know, in the time that he was raising his girls, like over the course of 25 years in the school system, I really don't know if he ever met the superintendent. Like maybe he was in the same like cafeteria with him or something one time. I don't know that he met him. But one time in a family discussion and like thinking about the work that I did, my brother said to me, like, this is going on in our district, but Dr. Jim, he's got it. And I have to tell you that went through me because I thought to myself, that's what every leader wants, right? Every principal, want people to say, she's got it. He's got it. We know this is tough. We know there are different opinions on the board, but they've got it, right? They're attending to it and they're going to be student-centered, explore possibilities, land on a path. I didn't say land on a solution because, you might have to, that path might have to meander a little bit, right? So not like this is a prescription that we landed on or a solution, but they've got it. I'll never forget him saying that because I was like driving home thinking like, that's all a leader really wants to have said is like, he's got it. Right.
So to the point that Mr. Cathcart made, we have a facility study. I'm not sure if all of our community knows about it. And that turns into a facilities workshop, I think, where we do talk about that and the demographics and the enrollment and the construction, all those things at the workshop.
And there are topics that don't have to be a separate session, right? You could designate. There are boards that designate October, we're going to spend an extra half hour, not 2 hours, half hour highlighting where we are with facilities. November, we're going to spend half an hour highlighting and just asking the hard questions, not solving, right? What we're going to do about whatever it is, bus loops, overcrowding, whatever it is, not small issues, big issues. So you can weave it into your public meeting, but you like plan it ahead for the months.
And I'm glad you said asking because, the demographics changing in this town, the number of people coming into this town are going to require some really hard decisions, not just from the board, but from the public.
Yes.
Whether we do a referendum at some point, whether we
Right.
build, whether but there's a train coming down the track, so to speak.
Exactly.
And we have to
Yeah.
start prepping the public for the choices what choices
Right.
are available to them. They're
Right.
going to have to make.
You're going to have finance options. You're going to have construction options. I don't mean like by contractor. I mean, like, do we add on? Do we build new? Do we change grade levels at schools? Whatever those questions are, right? Neighborhood schools, grade cluster schools, all those decisions that come along with facilities, right?
Yeah, and can I just say one thing?
Please.
It's a really good point from Rick there because it is sooner than later. Like we can't wait until the latter because if we're going to be building, and obviously right now we have a tough time housing all our students.
Right.
This is something that you can't wait till they're done building and then decide for us to start building because once that is, then the population is going to shoot through the roof. And I think Trustee Cathcart has been on that, being on the town board, the zoning board. But this is something that is real and needs to be tackled sooner than later.
Thank you. So clearly we're hearing like this is rising to the top faster than we're ready for, and we better tackle it, right?
I don't think we're ready for 1,550 units.
You're not. You're not. So there's your starting point, right? Now, what's readiness look like?
So So to that point, is that a board goal or they gets tucked under a board goal as an action?
It's definitely board, right? It's not a district goal because it doesn't affect all of your employees. It's not, you're not going to build on it in your schools or your grade levels or your classrooms, right? It's a board goal. Facilities are the responsibility of the board.
Can I go back to something you said, which was, they get it. That was my comment about the young dynamic leadership in the buildings. They get it.
Oh, they get it. They live it every day. They're trying to figure out, is there a desk that fits in this classroom? Is there room for one more child at this grade level, right? Do I have a place for the club to meet, right? Are the fields ready, whatever it might be? They absolutely are living it. And when facilities are in a bind, like when they're overcrowded or overused or not in good condition, it limits what you can do for your kids, period, right? Limits what you can do for your kids.
I just want to say that I do have a meeting set up for with an energy savings company, but also I'm looking into our borrowing capacity
Great.
just so we can see how we might want to move forward and what our options are.
Super. So, you know, that great BA lens who's looking forward to not just what the borrowing capacities are, but when your current debt rolls over, how you lower your interest rates, all of those pieces, right? What the timing might be so that you can stretch those dollars as far as you can stretch them. Right.
Ms.
Sorry.
Wilson, I have a question and it's not a comment or anything. It's just how you phrased it really well before when you said, how do we advance our district goals? And that should be a board goal. How we, I guess, full circle.
Exactly.
Do you have any suggestions on that?
I do. A couple for you to think about. So the question about how do you advance the 3 district goals? The first is that, you know, again, I'm going to go back to, you're not doing that nitty gritty work, right? That's the work of every employee who signs on with you. That takes a structure, right? And I think Mrs. McNeil mentioned earlier, you know, that takes a structure of what's our plan? How do we move it forward? I like to work in 18-month plans. I don't think people with this type of work, not the facility work, this type of work, early childhood, college and career readiness, every child known, that type of work, we can wrap our heads around in our classrooms and in our buildings and with our administrators for 18 months. What needs to happen next and how do we lay that out? And that looks like 5 or 6 or 4 things that we're going to do. It doesn't look like 32. Somebody handed me a plan one time that had literally like 62 action steps. And then I was like, you're not going to live long enough to get this done, right? They're all great ideas. No, it's not going to happen. So 3, 4 things, 5 things maybe that can happen under each of those goals in the next 18 months, right? Your administrators know, your faculty knows. They know what makes sense in terms of first, second, third, how we build upon what has more meaning than something else. It'll all tie to your professional learning plan. Your folks have that. Your faculty leaders and your administrators, they know how to design a great professional learning plan to advance this work, right? Highlighting one of those goals, either in a workshop or in a section of a board meeting 3 times over the next year would be really important, really important. But these goals are well crafted. They will matter a lot to your mission, to strengthening kids' lives, right? But they don't happen because they were crafted and they're on your website, right? They only happen with the action steps under them. And, you know, I'm happy to help people with that, but your principals, your directors, your coordinators, your teacher leaders, they know what to do. They need to know, do we have the construct to say this is next, then that, then that. Right? Was I not clear?
No, it was really clear. Where, and I'll say I can do a better job of this is, as you said, our administrators know those. the PDPs that our teachers will be putting together at the beginning of the year will require them to focus on this. And we give examples. We
Really
say-
important.
We give
Right.
examples, we give the professional development. And here's where it could be clearer. So Mrs. Cavens went ahead and her whole presentation was on social and emotional learning and how she's rolling out the new programs and Character Strong and building on what sixth grade does and all those things. Where it wasn't as overt was that was one of the actions of that activity or that plan. And so making a better statement of this is being delivered today as one of the actions to meet that goal.
Absolutely, right? This is part of the plan. We're rolling it out. This is what's next. Yeah. It all ties together. Some of you have heard me use the word tether. I love it when we're talking about your goals, right? Everything has to be tethered to these goals. So the action plans, the professional development, the professional goals for each individual in instruction, like they have to be reflected in these goals. Or they're just wishes, right? They're just wishes and somebody's hoping that that'll come true. No, I'm not placing bets on that, right? I'm placing bets on well-crafted plans.
I'll pick up the next one because I think I'm speaking for some of the other voices I've heard in the room. Going back to a board governance is the community sport and the stewardship. And one of the issues at our board meetings is our public is used to the practice of coming to the podium, asking a question and expecting an answer. It's the practice that goes back many, many years. And I know that even I have said, I'll answer your questions at the end of all public comments. It's greeted sometimes with, no, I expect an answer now. And I'm thinking that's a governance issue. And I'm trying to figure out
It is.
as a board goal, how do we work on that?
Yeah. So that public comment is difficult in that it's a cultural issue. It's like traditionally people have been able to, I always say that it's public comment. It's not Q&A. It's not. It's the design by law is comment and input. It is not stump the board members or stump the superintendent or, so it's comment. And that might be a cultural shift. And you might really need to spend some time talking about that. When somebody asks a question that there's an easy answer to, here's the answer. This is what's going to happen next. Thanks for raising it. Fine. I expect that you have a time limit at public comment. Do you have that? Good. Okay, that's important. Because it isn't a platform for a diatribe, right? It's not a platform for, I'm going to share my philosophy with you tonight, right? But it's not by design, right? So by practice, it might be different right now. But I have to say, like, we want your input. We want your commentary, your view. It might end up in a question. It might end up in a hope. And I hope the board will. Fine. We respectfully take that input. But it's not designed as I'm here to challenge you with 62 questions. And I'm marking off how many of them you answered. It is input. The design is, I'm here to say I'm concerned about. I'm here to say I would like to see a different direction, right? I'm here to say I'm thrilled with, you don't get those very often, but I'm thrilled with, right? I'm here to say I've been observing this and I hope it's on the board's radar, right? I'm here to say I didn't particularly like the rollout of X. So the next time you roll something out, I hope you do it this way. That's the intent, right? So you might need to talk about getting back to intent, but you can't fall into the trap of, running as fast as you can run to answer questions that are just being fired at you. It's not your role. You don't have the information. And you can say, is there an overarching thought that you would like to leave us with in terms of what you'd like to see, right? In terms of what you'd hope to see. But it's a pretty slippery slope when you feed into we're going to spend an hour and a half listening to people fire questions that don't have a comment or a recommendation in them. Right? And you have the, I don't mean right meaning legal. I mean like the governance right to set that stage a little differently, right? To appreciate and acknowledge people. But sometimes you also have to say, like, there is no answer for that tonight, because there isn't, right? Or there's somebody else in the district that you needed to go to first.
So how does that get crafted into a board goal?
Yeah, okay, so it can get crafted into a board goal, but it can also get crafted into, I have two examples I'll send to Dr. Haynes. It can get crafted into this is our board statement that we read every meeting. I know you have one. Yeah, no, the board, there are boards who work very hard at crafting the statement about we're going to open public comment, the purpose of public comment is, and the rules of public comment are.
But
Right. And it's not to shut people down, it's to govern well.
Dr. Martinez reads that statement every meeting.
Yeah, but I like the idea that we need to define for the public and for ourselves. Yeah, so in terms
Purpose.
of a board goals, I think we need to be more clear on not just this, but Robert's rules and the process. We all need to be knowledgeable of the process of how the board meeting is run. But I think specifically here is that, I didn't until very recently know that, really know that it's not supposed to be a real Q&A. If it's a simple question like, when's the first day of school? Like, we should just answer that. But if it's a more complex question that we should, not under the guise, but because it's a complex question, it deserves a complex answer.
Yeah.
Not just something off the top of my head. And
Yeah.
so here's the person that you call or see me after the meeting or because this is not the forum for it.
Yeah.
But that comments do help because I know for myself, there are times that topics that I didn't think were as complex become very complex when the public
Right.
makes a comment
Yeah.
and gives me a different angle.
That very few people are moved, and I mean this in a very positive way, are moved to like leave the comfort of their home and family to come to a board meeting on a trivial, something they think is trivial, right? They have a motion and a drive and a purpose and a philosophy, whatever it is, to like show up. So respected. We also have to remember that like one person or 5 people or 10 people don't always represent all of Ridgefield Park. So you're taking it in, saying, this is one slice of our public, and we need to really know what the 360-degree view might be. There's another point you made, I'm sorry, about the information.
If I could
Just
just make
helping- Yeah.
if I could just make a comment on the public comment
Yes,
and the fact that it's comment, not Q&A. And I totally agree with what Dr. Martinez said. If it's an easy question, like when is school
Oh,
opening, you give them
absolutely.
the answer. And I do agree and support that the rest is comment. The way that we respond to the public to
mhm.
appreciate their comments
yes.
and then figure out, okay, we got all of these comments. Answering the Q&A online is sometimes it's hard to write things and express a clear opinion. So
Right.
is it at next meeting at the end of the superintendent's report, it's 5 minutes to say, here were the biggest questions and comments from last time, and here's what the thinking behind it, or
Yeah.
I don't know, some way to say we
Close the
heard
loop.
you.
Right, close the
Right,
loop.
because we hear them,
Right.
but then they don't ever know what we've done with
Yeah.
it.
So it is that great example of like close the loop. So let's just say, 5 or 15 people are at the September board meeting to say the kindergarten classes are way too high, right? I'm just making this up. You might have really small classes, I don't know, but too many kids, right? If there is any action to be taken, superintendent will say, thank you so much. We are very aware. We know that there could be better circumstances and conditions. And at the October meeting, I'll be reporting on what steps we were or were not able to take. And if we were not, why? Like why? Like literally space, fiscal, couldn't find a teacher, monitor didn't approve, whatever it might be, right? But I think you're not looking to answer every question. You're looking for the trends. Like overwhelmingly, this is what bubbled up.
I think another option, and I guess anybody correct me if I'm wrong, but another option would be, for example, Dr. Haynes, since you know the system, is to say, that's a good question for Ms. Gonzalez. Please email her and CC me.
Absolutely.
That's a good question for facilities. Please email that, or for the teacher, email the teacher and then CC me, the principal and myself. Because that says, I respect your question. It's a good question. This is not the forum for it, but it will be answered. And then if there's a big CC list, then there's accountability as well. Because some people
Yeah.
feel like they're not going to get an answer to questions.
I
Right,
think
it establishes the chain of command.
Yes, and to that point, you might have this, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer. Many districts have developed a really nice one-page chart. If you have a question about, direct your question to this person, here's the email address. If you have a question about lunches, buses, curriculum, health and safety, whatever it might be, like, please start here, right? And it's a good tool, and it's a good tool to like keep sharing and sharing and sharing.
just quickly, and I think what Dr. Haynes implemented, where the public comments could be answered on, are answered online. It's like a question answer or something that we
Okay.
never
Yep.
had before. And I think is great if the public takes advantage of that as well.
Yeah.
And not kind of, if we can't answer something and it can be answered, it is answered at a later time,
That's a great tool. I would also say if something is pervasive, like it just is boiling, right? Boiling over, then it is a quick, I shouldn't use the word quick because everything takes a long time, but an FAQ. Like if we've got a lot of people confused about because they don't have the right information, or they're believing something on Facebook, or they've got a rumor going through the neighborhood, this is all life, right? Happens everywhere. Then sometimes there is a need for an FAQ. Like, this is the issue, this is what we're doing. So you just like, these are the 6 questions we keep hearing. Here's the legitimate, with authority, status or response on those 6 questions. We're going to stop the rumor cycle, right?
But Diane's point is well taken, that sometimes you need to answer them verbally,
Yes,
so there is no misunderstanding.
absolutely.
You can interpret it,
Clarity.
an email or whatever, any way you want, but if they hear it directly from Barry,
Yeah.
that's,
Oh, misinformation or rumor has to be addressed in public, because coming from public comment has to be, excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you to like correct. That has to happen. That's the clarity. Don't sit back and just listen to misinformation or rumors or urban myth get recycled and recycled and recycled. Yeah, right. Because then you haven't done your job, right? So you are opening the year with some really important work to crystallize around board goals, facilities, communication, primarily, right? They both will build lots and lots of trust. You're opening with clarity around 3 important district goals that are multi-year goals that need to continue. And I'm going to go back to my first words about recentering. It was really hard, understatement, in the last 2.5 years to get a lot of momentum in any district around district goals. We were in survival health mode, and we were not whole, right? We were all worried about a lot of things. So if you feel like in the last 18 months, we didn't get the traction we wanted to see as much as we wanted, or we didn't get the momentum that we need to build around college and career readiness, whatever it might be, right? There were good reasons for that. Not blame. There were good reasons for that. This is a time for recentering, right? So when Dr. Haynes opened school for everyone, the chance to like deep breath, recenter, refocus, crystallize is the path that you can follow, as a board also. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I want to be really clear on your time also. I want to thank board members. You are selfless servants. You are selfless leaders. Nobody gets the number of hours, preparation, thought that you put in. People still ask administrators, what do you do during the summer? And a lot of times they work as hard or harder during the school year. So, whether that's the BA, whether that's the tech department here, whether that's Dr. Haynes working on so many complex issues. Summer is short in the life of a school. It's a quick turnaround to welcome your 2,200 kids back next week. I just want to say, there's a poem in the back of your folders. Read it again, read it again. But the last line is, turn to one another. Turn to one another, because you've got all the talent you need and all the expertise on this board and all the goodwill. So don't turn away from each other, turn toward one another. Oh, no, just go do the good work. Go
So,
do the good work.
hold up, before we dismiss, some of the people who do the good work and never get recognition, the technology department,
Yes.
Simone and Rick, showing up on a Saturday, setting everything up. Thank you for all of your selfless work too. It's very much appreciated.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes.
We do. How many people are online? Nope, there's no public here. There's no community public,
Motion to adjourn.
but there's no hands raised, right? We have to at least do that. Make sure there's no public comment.
Motion to adjourn.
No, hold on. We have to follow the rules. Carrie, go ahead.
We need a motion to open to public comment.
I make a motion to open the public comment.
And
I second.
Any public comment?
Motion to close.
I make a motion to close.
My second.
Motion to close.
Thanks, everyone. This was a great
Thank you.
session.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
thank you, Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye, you too.